Hey, welcome to Vision to Success with Maria and Jason.
Hey, it's great to be back with you all. We have a great show for you today. We have two guests, and I know a lot of you who are business owners, especially in Las Vegas, are. It's not just a challenge to hire new employees right now, it's a struggle from what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing. So, we're going to spend a whole show just talking about that. But before, and in fact, our next show too is going to be about that as well. So, we're going to do two shows on this topic because I think it's so important and because everyone's having such a hard time with it. So we want to try to get some experts on here who can give you some really good advice, not just about what you can do about it, but what's going on and how you might be able to employ some creative solutions to bring in, and not just bring in, but retain your new employees. So I would like our guests to introduce themselves before we get started, then we'll dig into it. But go ahead, Z, tell us about yourself, who you are, and what you'd like us to know about you.
Sure. My name is Zia Ali. I've got over 20 plus years of human resources experience, my most recent being the director of HR. I worked for a global engineering company in Canada that transferred me to Raleigh, North Carolina. I worked with IBM and other big pharma in Florida, and I'm now living in Las Vegas. So thank you for having me on your show.
And you were doing a lot of great things, helping a lot of small businesses, helping a lot of solopreneurs, helping a lot of people figure out what they're going to do with their lives right now. So thank you for being here today. Ben, tell us about you and your background.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Ben Borey, and I am an HR and benefits consultant. I work for a local benefits broker named Shea Insurance. My background, I worked for ADP for 10 years in the human resource outsourcing division. I worked with companies that had between 10 to 500 employees. And really what I did is I went through and I would do an in-depth analysis of a company's HR department and took that information in coordination with their goals and helped design a solution to help them solve their challenges. So that's what I did for the previous 10 years, and been doing employee benefits for a couple of years and have my own HR consulting firm as well.
Excellent. Well, I definitely want to dig into benefits and how employers can possibly use different kinds of benefits to attract and recruit and retain employees. But guys, what's going on with hiring? Maria, I know you have some thoughts on this. What's going on with hiring?
You know what? I think it's COVID-19 has a big impact of what's happening right now. A lot of people are receiving so much benefits that they don't want to go to work. And I don't blame anybody. I don't blame this because there are a lot of gap in our system before that probably some people is taking advantage of this situation right now. But this will run out, and we cannot just keep on sitting down in our living room and waiting for this money. It is about getting back in workforce development. We cannot just do this because it's gonna run out, and literally it's gonna, all our kids, all the people coming after us will be suffering from these benefits that we're receiving right now. So yeah, that's my take in that.
Yeah, I think certainly that the benefits are a factor, but almost half the states have reduced those benefits back down to the regular state level benefits. There's some things like child tax care credits and that kind of thing kicking in really soon here, which may be a factor. But is it that simple? Is it, Ben, Z, is it as simple as just the benefits that are out there? I mean, my thoughts are we were in a tight labor market before COVID started. In 2019 and early 2020, before all this started. Is it as simple as just unemployment benefits right now?
I think that if people are hungry enough, or if they're people with passion, they'd like to get out there and pursue whatever, or the new grads as well. I know a lot of them, every year we're pumping out grads. Is there enough work going to university? I was being headhunted to be a recruiter for a university as well. It's a business. It is a business. When we have trillions of dollars of outstanding student loans, when these students graduate, they're expected to hit the ground running and get a job. Companies would open their doors, but how many positions will there be available for the grads that's coming out on a yearly basis? I know it's controversial, but I've had grads they had their masters or PhDs, and they said, so you're not going to hire me because I don't have the practical experience, but if you have someone who could hit the ground running with practical experience, and you were the hiring manager or decision maker, who would you choose? How do these new grads get back out there and get into the workforce? That's been a challenge.
There's a lot of companies too that they love the fresh.
Exactly,
so
the
they,
entrepreneurial,
yeah,
the new,
the new, yeah, because when
Exactly.
you get out from school, you learn so much things that you want to actually put your hands on to what you learn from school.
So
Yeah.
that follows through what Jason just said. When you're a new grad or when you graduate, how do you, the perception of new grads, some of them may think, oh, I'll go for the big guys, the big five companies or whatever. But why not to change the perception of when you graduate, yes, you have your master's, your PhD, get into a smaller company, get in with an entrepreneur who could take you under their wings and be hungry and do more than is expected of you. Like a lot of people say, I'm not doing anything that's out of my job description, right? I won't go over and beyond because you're not paying me. But if you're hungry and you use that, the drive to absorb as much as possible, take advantage. You've got that knowledge that no one can take away from you, and use that as a stepping stone.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at the challenges that companies are having with hiring, I think the issue that you brought up with the unemployment, that's only going to impact a certain segment of
Exactly.
the workforce.
Yes.
So people that are making under $20 an hour, that really is impacting them. So I know I've got a good friend who's a local business owner, and they are struggling to find cashiers that $15 to $20 an hour range. It's a huge struggle, because if somebody's making that amount of money by sitting on their couch, it's going to be challenging for them to get them to want to come to the door and actually work for it. So,
Piece of advice: if that's you, don't be last.
yes,
right?
absolutely.
This is running out in September.
That's exactly the point you brought up.
And as I said, I think this problem's a little more complex than that. But don't be last.
Yeah. So I think once you get above that $20 an hour range, there are other dynamics that are going into it. I think, at least what I saw with businesses were hesitating to make decisions during the coronavirus. Even if they were going to save money on a benefits program or save money with payroll or things like that, they just weren't. It was like a deer caught in headlights. So, but I think what's going to go on over the next 6 to 12 months is you're going to start seeing companies are going to want their employees to come back to the office. You're going to have a lot of people that have gotten used to working from home. So you're going to have a lot of people that are actually leaving companies. So there's an article in the new edition of HR Magazine that talked exactly about that. So.
And that's a controversial topic as well. Do we have the employees work from home? There are certain positions that they can, but then people lose that we're human beings. We need that interaction. As we need, especially if you've got a family or the distraction or whatever, you need to develop the people skills and the communication and keep it alive, because we're not robots, we're not machines. So it's a kind of a catch-22.
So let's dig into that a little deeper, because you're both HR professionals. You've been doing this for a long time, and I know this is a big decision that companies are starting to make. Do we bring people back? Do we let them work at home? How do we handle this problem? Companies know they're going to face a lot of resistance on bringing people back. What before we get into the nuts and bolts and the finances and all that about benefits and recruiting and that kind of stuff, especially for these companies that are out of that $15 to $20 an hour salary or wage range, what are your thoughts on this? What do you think companies should do? What do you think companies should think about in order to make this decision?
Well, it depends on the product or service
Okay.
for that company. If it's a front line, depending on what they're selling, or if it's more customer service based, more interrelation, dealing with someone, yes. So it all depends on the product or service.
Yeah. So you have companies in different industries, different sizes. What's good for one company is not going to be good for the other.
Yes.
So it really does depend on a company's circumstances. I've done a lot of research into employee engagement and what motivates people. And so I do think that there is a balance to strike between what you're talking about, having people there to be able to, really interacting with your teammates it's part of the culture of a company.
Yeah.
But there is also, my wife is a prime example of someone, when she was in college, she used to study from the library. I can't stand being in those kind of really quiet environments. So I will always go to coffee shops. But she is that person that can sit at home completely isolated and do a really, really good job. But that's not everybody. So you really also need to take stock of your workforce who can work at home and actually get the job done. Right. So I do think that, having a little bit more flexibility, allowing people to maybe work from home for a day or two a week might be something to look at. But definitely having people back there's benefit to that as well. So
I think you said two really important things. Is one, understanding your workforce. I ran into this in the Air Force at several squadrons I worked in, is where we'd have a big open bullpen area and some people worked well in that environment, other people didn't.
Exactly.
And of course, when you're in the military and you're working out of a banged up old hangar on an Air Force base, you're very limited. You can't just go rent more real estate. You can't do those kinds of things. But that was something we had to take into account. And I'm thinking this from the perspective of, again, looking at a company's bottom line. Why am I renting such a big office space, right? Why?
Yeah.
That could be employee bonuses. That could be more pay for employees. That could be more flexibility. Depending on where you're at. Not so much here in Las Vegas, but if you're out of San Francisco or New York City or some of the bigger cities in this country, you could pay to travel people back and forth once a week for key meetings for one day, put everyone in the same place, and still never approach the amount you'd reach by paying the rent you'd be paying on your facility, right?
Yeah.
And it depends on the company. It depends on, like, when you look at the bottom line, yes, you'll be saving on rent for rental space and all of that, the overall cost, operating cost. If that is shared with the employees, how do you retain, if you want to waive that carrot, if you stay with the company, these are the bonuses. If the company shares some of that with the employees, then that would help with retention. But if they don't, and they keep that money in their own pocket, what would happen? You're going to have a revolving door. So in a way, it's kind of, a catch-22. There are pluses and there are minuses.
Yeah.
Because it is happening, by the way, it is happening to a lot of companies right now. They've already gotten rid of their corporate headquarters, their spaces and whatnot. Everything is done virtual. And you're right about the connection. If they give back and they bring, I know with some of the larger companies I worked at, we had retreats. The companies would host it, or we'd have brown bag lunches. It wasn't taken away from the company per se, the hours that we worked. It was us bringing in people who would add value during lunchtime. Or we'd have chair massages from a school that would come in, just to help the employees de-stress. So there are a lot of things that companies could do, working remote, working in-house. There are pluses and minuses if the employer would really take care of the employees and give back.
So let's shift gears a little bit. I want to take a break in a few minutes, but before we get into the real nuts and bolts of what we're going to talk about, let's shift gears a little bit. And you've both done a lot of hiring. You've both done a lot of interviewing. What are, in general, employees looking for when they are looking to be hired, when they are looking for a new job? What are they looking for? What are they looking for their companies? And then when it comes to retention, what are employees looking for retention? Does that shift over time? So I know when I've been looking for a job or trying to move into a new assignment in the Air Force, it was all about, I got to get there. Then after being there a little bit, I started thinking more about what else would I like to make this more fulfilling? What would keep me here, kind of thing, right? What are employees looking for when they're looking to get hired? And let's start with that, and then we'll pull back to what are employees looking for to keep them around?
Growth promotion from within, being satisfied, being valued. But growth promotion from within, so that they're not looking to leave once they've worked and gotten the experience in that position. What a lot of people are not aware of, in one position you may have the salary. When you're hiring them and you're negotiating the salary, are you bringing them in based on their overall experience at the low salary range, mid or high? So every position, they're classified as ETR, easy to recruit, NTR, normal to recruit, or HTR, hard to recruit. And the salary ranges differ. Now, if you want to give promotion, you're setting the expectation, you're sharing this information with the employees after you do the onboarding and the job descriptions and everything else. So they know that they'll have the same title, but the salary ranges may change. You give them, the increase and whatnot. When they reach the higher end, after they've been with the company for a while, then you move them to the next classification, so that they won't leave to go with another company outside and take their knowledge with them. Because every time you replace this employee, it would cost you more in terms of recruiting and screening and advertising, bringing that person on board, and then helping them acclimatize and be familiar with your culture and your expectation, and then productivity. How much time have you wasted, in the interim?
Yeah.
And if you're an HR leader, if you're the HR director, the HR vice president, if you are involved in this is a lot of your time.
Exactly.
Yeah, very much is.
Exactly.
Yeah, my experience has been with smaller organizations, and I know that it's a lot more challenging with a smaller organization because you don't have as many resources when it comes to recruiting. So, but I think you're exactly right. The employee, what they're looking for is they're not necessarily just looking for that job. They're looking for where does this fit in within my career? And if you can provide a path where they can grow with the organization, and it doesn't always have to be financial or necessarily moving to another position, but it can be giving them more training for skills. It can be, that learning management component is a huge part to making people feel like they're progressing in their career. So,
statistics have shown as well that people stay because of their leaders. People would give up, I think 60% said they will stay and give up to $10,000 to stay with their leaders. If they like their manager, if they like the leader, because a leader isn't dictating, a leader is helping them grow, a leader is helping pulling them up, they would stay. If you feel valued, wouldn't you want to stay?
absolutely.
So the leadership makes a big difference.
I
Because a
think
lot of people leave because of their leaders.
I think so. And the take-home lesson I heard from what both of you have said is that if you are getting ready to hire, if you're trying to hire, if you're struggling to hire, no matter what industry you're in, don't just look for a warm body to fill the slot for a certain amount of pay. Think about the future of that person who's going to be filling that slot and how over the course of 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years, you are going to look at them at increasing their amount of responsibility. And then as they take on more responsibility and become a more valuable asset to your company and to the bottom line of your company, how are you going to compensate them, both in terms of financial compensation, but giving them education, training, skills that are going to make them a better asset for you? And yes, that might make them a better asset to somebody else. One of the things that was always true for us in the military is we knew everyone was going to move on. There's no staying in the same place in the military. 3 years, 4 years, 5 years max, but we still develop people to the best of our ability to help them fulfill their potential to go on and be an asset to somebody else, knowing that we were going to bring someone in. Nothing's ever permanent in life. So what do you guys think about that, of having that development path and kind of knowing that someone's eventually going to leave someday?
So I actually think that's a positive thing. So if you know exactly what your employee wants to do, so let's say they have the idea that they want to open their own business, or they want to do something else in 3 to 5 years. If you know exactly when they're going to leave, you can prepare for that departure. What is more difficult to prepare for is when that person just leaves without any notice. So I think that in terms of the succession planning, planning your workforce, that it's good to know what a person really wants to do.
With succession planning as well, not everybody's meant to be a manager. They may have the technical skills, they may be perfect for sitting behind the computer, but they may not have the soft skills, the management skills to lead people. So when you show a progression, retaining that talent within the company, you have to look at it. You have to make that evaluation. Is this person really management material? And if somebody leaves the company, again, you're looking at when we lose an employee or a customer, we always did. We have a one-on-one to see how could we have kept you. What did we do? What have we done in the past? Or what did you like? What is the reason for leaving? So you could evaluate. Are they leaving because of lack of growth opportunity, money? Why were they being headhunted? Were they, like you say, starting their own business? What was their motive? So we could improve whatever we've been doing by getting that feedback as well from them, soliciting feedback.
So this is a great place to take a break. And what I want to do is I want to take a short break. I want to come back and I want to talk to both of you about what you've learned about why employees leave during those exit interviews, other things you've learned about why employees leave, and then how can we use that as business owners to make decisions and plan ahead before we hire so that we're not surprised by that later on. So let's take a break. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
Traditional TV is going away. Hollywood is starting to fade. People are demanding real stories from real people. Our voices are now being heard in our own way. Podcasts, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok Live are becoming the norm. Internet TV has now reached the highest demand in human history. Social media shows is now the new media of the century. Traditional TV is going away. Hollywood is starting to fade. People are demanding real stories from real people. Our voices are now being heard in our own way. Podcasts, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok Live are becoming the norm. Internet TV has now reached the highest demand in human history. Social media shows is now the new media of the century. Traditional TV is going away. Hollywood is starting to fade. People are demanding real stories from real people. Our voices are now being heard in our own way. Podcasts, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube.
Welcome back to Vision Success. We have Ms. Z here and Mr.
Thank
Ben.
you.
And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you again. And so before the break, Z, you were talking about in some of the companies that you've worked for, big companies, you were doing exit interviews before somebody left, and you were trying to collect that data and information about why they were leaving. And I think there's some valuable lessons for especially our small business owners as they're getting ready to bring more people on coming out of COVID. Some things that you've learned, both you and Ben have learned. What have you learned from those exit interviews? What have you learned about why people leave? What have you learned about why people stay? And what are some things that our viewers, our business owners, can take away from what you've learned, so that before they even start to hire people, they can be thinking about those things?
Well, I think process improvement is really important, and that's the purpose of doing the exit interviews, right? You want to gather feedback, whether it's positive or negative, and sometimes employees may not, they're leaving, but they still don't want to burn any bridges, so they may not, it's not what they say, sometimes it's what they don't say. So you can as well see if there's turnover in one department versus another. Is that a management issue? Is it personality conflict? Why do we have a revolving door in one over the other? And why are they seeking opportunities elsewhere? Are they going to a competitor? And what is our competitor offering that we're not? So these are things to look at, because we don't want to bleed employees. Every time an employee leaves, you think cha-ching, especially if they're valued. It's money out the door, right? So it's gathering that information and see how could you improve what you're doing and take it from there. Run with it.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
So it depends on also when someone's leaving. So if they are a tenured employee and they're leaving, or are they in their first 12 months and they're leaving, that can tell you a lot. If they're leaving in the first 12 months, it could be there's something wrong with the hiring process itself. You might be hiring people and giving them the wrong expectations. So when you're coming in, you're kind of selling this job, and then when they're actually doing the job, it's not the same thing. So I know we did allude to someone's manager being a source of somebody leaving, and you can tell if there are multiple people leaving a department or a specific leader, you might look to management. You can lose people for not paying them enough. So you really do need to be aware of what is the job function that someone has, and then what is the benefit or the compensation level that exists in the market that you're in.
I've heard you both talk about two things just since we came back from break, and we say it on this show all the time. Do your market research, do your competition research, and do your industry research. Understand what the value of someone who's good at what you're paying them to do is getting out on the open market, and then make decisions accordingly.
I spoke with a dentist recently and was a bit surprised because he's a professional. He said, I can't keep people at my front desk. He's got a revolving door. So I said, well, when you measure them, or when they have an evaluation, 3 months, 6 months, whatever, are you setting the expectation? How do they know what they're doing? Did they get a job description? He said, no, I don't have a job description. So I said, how can you measure that employee and say she or he is not doing a good job when you didn't give them a job? So something simple.
How can you expect them to do a good job when you didn't set the expectation.
Exactly. So these are all things a lot of maybe the entrepreneurs or the smaller companies may not be aware of. You want a job description that details. Of course, it can't elaborate all the, the minute things that in their job description. But the highlight should be the primary focus of this is your daily job function, this is the expectation, and whatnot, and have them sign off on it that they do understand. And then you show them the progression as they go along in terms of title, salary ranges, and whatnot. They also should have an employee handbook. And no matter how big the company is, they should have, even if it's a tiny little handbook, as to what's expected of them, and be trained on even sexual harassment. If they're serving the customers in a front end, there's certain things that they may not be doing that they were probably not taught at their previous company. So you're right, setting the expectation in the beginning, and not penalizing the employee when you do have a revolving door. Does that make sense?
And I think it's also on the workforce division's handbook. You cannot just fire somebody not doing a good job if you don't have this employee's expectation or whatever you call it in the company. You know that,
But
right?
a lot of the employees and a lot of the entrepreneurial small businesses, they're not aware of all the.
Yeah.
That's why I totally agree with outsourcing. When I worked in one of the companies, we did outsource the benefit side to ADP because that's their area of expertise. It's like the entrepreneurs. If your expertise is not on social media advertising, you hire and you outsource for whatever. You can't be a jack of all trades and a master of none. You can't be, especially if you have a revolving door. Especially if you want to hit the ground running and develop sales, and you've put out so much money and whatnot. They're experts in different areas. Why not utilize those until you ramp up, until you can build your core team?
Absolutely. So, lesson 1, do your market research. Lesson 2, before you post that ad or however you're getting word around that you're hiring, set the clear expectations in your own mind of what you want this new employee or this new set of employees to do, and it may be different for each one. It's a little bit of work. You're going to do that through your job description, and you're going to do that through your employee handbook. If you don't have those, if you don't know how to do those, and there's no reason you would, you don't have to go to an ADP either. There are lots of small HR consultants out there who help small business with this for a really reasonable fee to just do the pieces they need to do. Right, Ben?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm working for an ADP and then kind of doing the HR consulting on my own. I kind of see the benefits of both scenarios. So one of the things that was interesting about what I did do at ADP is this, it was an analysis that covered every aspect of human resources. And what I really found is that's where the benefit lied in the service I was providing. Because that lack of awareness of what's going on, that lack of strategy, was something that they didn't have access to. And so if you can kind of shine the light on those things, those blind spots, so to speak, then you can really help someone to be a lot more strategic in their planning. So another thing that I have started to look a lot into that, again, the smaller companies that I deal with don't focus on, is employment branding. So you can have a really good company brand. I've got a client that has an amazing company brand, but they weren't really focused on their brand as an employer. And you have an employment brand whether you want to or not. So when you go online and if you typed your company name in or you typed your company name in and jobs, whatever comes up is your brand. When they find your website, if they're looking for a job, that comes up, that's your brand. If you don't have a career webpage, if it's not easy to apply for a job, that's a very big challenge because you don't know all of the people that didn't apply for your jobs. So an employment brand, really focusing on that, it's actually not as complicated as one would think. There are a few, I've got a checklist that I take companies through that I could do an assessment in about 5 minutes and then we can kind of create the checklist of activities based on that. So that would be a big focus if a company wants to really improve how they're doing their hiring. That's one thing to focus on.
Excellent. So lesson 3, know your employment brand and know your company culture too, because your company culture, and it could be different behind the scenes than customer service facing, know those as well and how that relates to your employment brand. I do want to come back to something Z said before, because I think this is an important lesson. Evaluation. Let's talk about evaluation. We all know it's important, Well, what should especially small business owners be thinking about in terms of how often do I evaluate? What do I evaluate? Let's talk about evaluation.
Well, when you hire a new employee, no matter what position, after 3 months, they should meet a one-on-one with the employee to say, what do you like about your job? Is it meeting your expectation? Is there anything that we can do differently, or what can we improve upon? I once worked with a company that asked, they had an award that was given out to anyone within the company, no matter what level, whether you're a janitor, whether you're CEO, whatever. Evaluate your job and tell me, what would you do differently? What would you like to improve on what you were doing? Not what the company's expectation of is if you had to rewrite your job description to be a happier employee, to be satisfied with and taking the company to the next level in terms of productivity, what would you recommend? And if the company, so everyone this was rolled out to the entire company, if anyone proposed something that was utilized, that saved the company money, that they implemented, saved the company money, they were given an award at the end of the year. They say, thank you. Give it that pat on the back. Now, each employee felt like, oh man, I'm a part of the company. They're taking what I do seriously, because they're in the trenches. The CEO or the CFO, whoever is running the company, the decision makers, they're not really doing the nitty gritty, the hands-on work for any of the positions. And you're not demeaning any of the position. You're empowering each of those employees at every level to say, you know what, my job is valuable. He or she's taking my input. And so that, in a way, makes the employees feel valued.
I really like what you said there, because I know for me, when I was an employee, but what people really do want to know is, how am I contributing to the overall piece of this pie? And just most companies, they don't share the direction of the company.
Exactly.
I don't know if they're afraid that they would know too many intimate details about the company or what, but I believe in that full transparency where people know, this is what I'm doing, this is how it contributes to the overall success of the organization. And like you're saying, you feel really good about that contribution. So,
Yeah.
And
Oh,
you
go ahead.
talk about,
I love the the recognition part that you were talking about, because when I was director of operations and marketing, I have like 50 employees, and how I recognize, I don't because I am not part of the recognition, the money that is given out to my employees. The recognition that I always do to my employees is I made them, every single employee I have, I made them feel so special, like you're my favorite. So every single 50 of my employees are my favorite,
right.
and they felt good about that. That's a recognition that is not monetary, and then you feel the closeness with employees.
so part of that falls under one of the retention.
Yes, exactly
Retention
right.
of how do you retain these employees? You make them all feel special. At the end of the year, any special on a quarterly basis or whatever, you do a rewards and recognition. It costs peanuts, even with your customers as well. Any of your outside clients, instead of taking them out for lunch, or when you're meeting with them for lunch, or you invite them when you're making a presentation, whether quarterly, you're rolling it out, you're sharing you talk about some companies may not want to share, or they think they're giving out too much information. But as a company, wouldn't you want your employees to know, hey, guess what, guys, we did fantastic this quarter. You guys did a fantastic job, and I'd like to commend so-and-so, and you give them just a simple coffee mug with a picture of themselves getting an award, or a picture of them sitting at the desk, and the company logo there, or an award, a plaque that they can put on their wall, or anything at all. Do you think they'll throw that out? I personally...
It goes a long way.
Exactly. Yeah. I personally was given one of those. I moved many times. I threw out a lot of coffee mugs and stuff, but I kept that one because why? It had my picture, but guess what? It had name branding for that company as well. I didn't throw it out.
The other recognition that is really good is lunch. Like you buy them lunch. That also goes a long way. Do you like lunches?
I do personally, but
anything, and I guess it's a tax write-off as well. You can have plaques, you can have trophies, and when you look from a cost-effective, I'm looking there, and you've got some. Look, let's talk world, Maria. That's a trophy. You held on to that. If you were taken out for lunch, that's another way of retaining. But you forget over the next 5 or 10 years, but you'd hold on to that little trophy, or whatever, or plaque on the wall, for a lifetime probably.
Yeah.
So always thinking creatively, retention, name branding, because you're not just giving that trophy to the person, your company name is there. So it's subliminal advertising. I worked for 10 years in advertising in Canada, so I've never ever forgotten the advertising and public relations, that I've done for any company.
One of the great things about recognition, both with those awards and also the program you talked about, where employees can make suggestions and benefit from having that suggestion implemented, is that it gives the leadership a chance to communicate what the strategy and what the big picture is.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of owners, a lot of leaders, both corporate, government, military, small business, they kind of assume everyone understands what the strategy is. They're so immersed in strategy, thinking about strategy all the time, what the big picture is, what they're trying to do. They think everybody gets it, and they're often very surprised to find out people don't understand what their contribution does to the company. I mean, it's on the poster on the wall. How can they not know, right? But that's why I think what you talked about with that suggestion program is so important, because it gives you a feedback loop that you might not have thought existed about how well is our strategy communicated to our employees. When they're making suggestions, are they making suggestions that are going to make their lives easier, or are they making suggestions that are really going to help implement the strategy of the company, improve the company, or is it some combination thereof? If you're getting a lot of these suggestions and they're not going to help the bottom line, the big picture strategy of the company and how it fits into the customers' lives and the community, then you probably are not communicating what your strategy is well all the way down to the working level. If you're getting a lot of those suggestions that are not only is this good for the employees, but this actually makes it better for the company and what we're trying to do here overall, you're probably doing a pretty good job communicating what the strategy is and how those employees fit into the strategy. Same thing with awards. If you're recognizing people for going above and beyond because it really helped out the company, it helped achieve the goals of the company, your employees are understanding what their role is and how they fit into the bigger picture strategy. Yeah.
You also want to be the company that people want to come to,
Mhm.
like you're the honey, and all those flies and bees and everything wants to come to you. You don't have to go search for them. Why? Because of name recognition, because of commendation, because if you're a happy employee and you post it on LinkedIn or any social media site that I work at XYZ company and they're a fantastic company. I did work at 3 major companies. It was so easy to recruit people because when you hire a core employee, especially with a difficult to fill skill set, guess what? And you have employee referral bonuses.
Mm-hmm.
If you hire someone and we bring them in, rest assured that they're referring someone who they've worked with in the past, who has a good reputation, who won't let them down because their reputation is on the line as well. So what would you do? You're doing name branding for that company, employee recognition, because those the company, you're selling the company. They're doing your advertising and marketing for you, and you're not even aware of it. Plus with your customers, if you treat your customers really well and they're pleased, wouldn't you want to tell XYZ or your friends that, hey, I worked with this company, they're amazing, they provided great, they helped me solve my problem or whatever. So there's name branding, name recognition, even on the outside that you are not really doing the work for, but your employees and your clients are doing the work as well. What are your thoughts?
That's really great. I love the part where you said you're actually giving bonuses when they refer it.
Employee referral bonuses, yes.
Yes, there you go. Right? Because I did a lot of those back in the day. So and you also mentioned about the reviews.
Mhm.
That's why we have all
Performance
these
reviews,
yeah,
yes.
Yelp and anything.
Yeah.
So those I love those.
The stipulation, though, with the employee referral bonus, the employee has to be within the company for at least 3 months.
Mhm.
So you've seen the productivity. And good people recruit good people. So if you work at a company and you work with a mate that's been fantastic, you got along, they can do the job and whatnot, you're basically headhunting without, you're stealing the talent from the other company that you just left and, bringing that person as your buddy, because we all want to work in a team. We want to have that connection, the human connection. And if you enjoy going to work with a group of people, wouldn't that make you happy to look forward to going to work? Because there are a lot of people who go to jobs on a daily basis and they're miserable. They're there just for the paycheck. They're there just to fill a 9-to-5 time, and it's so sad because life is short. You should, I'm not sure if Tony Robbins had said about if you're not fulfilled in what you're doing, then do something about it. You got to be fulfilled within.
That's great.
Satisfied, yeah.
Go ahead, Ben. Did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, so one of the things that so ADP bought a company called the Marcus Buckingham Company, and they implemented that as our, it was kind of the performance and employee engagement retention strategy. And so what it entailed was a weekly, a pulse survey where you answer the same 7 or 9 questions about did you provide value, talked about how you felt about your leadership, and there were 7 other questions. So it takes all of 10 seconds to do, but it can really give you an idea of how your employees are doing at all times. And because the answers are easy, it's easy data to plot, you can see when an employee is engaged or not just based on the data. I actually,
That's
when I
really
saw my answers to that, I could tell, was I unhappy at that time, or was I super engaged?
Can tell when you're having a bad day.
Yeah.
Right?
So, and you know, I don't think that you should just ask this information just for the purposes of asking. It does have to be used. So, and if a company is not going to utilize it, then I wouldn't do it, because it does take a little bit of time to
course.
implement.
They should they should put up like a kiosk in their workplace for those kind of questions. That would be like anytime an employee feel like it, they're mad or they're happy, they go out there. That would be like, I think that's a real one.
I went to urgent care, and on the box, I think outside when you just enter or leave, they had a suggestion box. I thought, what a good idea. So, were you pleased with the service? Blah, blah, blah. Just anonymous, but that means they care about how they're being perceived. Where if you're not putting anybody's names or anything. I thought that was a really good idea.
I saw, I think it was a medical facility where they had the smiley face and the even emotion face, and then the frowny face. So it's super easy to tell how
Right.
your
You just
experience
tap, you
was.
just tap the buttons, and,
Yeah.
and someone's going and counting up all the ones they get every day. Yeah.
That is a valid point, though, because if you think about when you ask someone to rate something on a scale from 1 to 10, I have gone to the same chiropractor or sports medicine guy for the last 12 years. And there's a scale of 1 to 10, and they actually have these pictures and descriptions. So 1 is like a little pinch, 3 is like a dragon's fire, and so. But it is a
make it
valid
fun.
point, because
Yeah.
Were you already too long didn't read at that point?
right.
So this is a great time for a break, but I do want to come back. I want to talk a little bit more about that. I want to talk a little bit more about the tools that employers can use to try to get this information. I want to talk a little bit more about the tangible benefits, Ben, that I know you can share with us that especially small businesses can do. So let's take a real short break, and then we will come back and we'll wrap things up with those topics.
Traditional TV is going away. Hollywood is starting to fade. People are demanding real stories from real people. Our voices are now being heard in our own way. Podcasts, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok Live are becoming the norm. Internet TV has now reached the highest demand in human history. Social media shows is now the new media of the century. Traditional TV is going away. Hollywood is starting to fade. People are demanding real stories from real people.
There you go, we're back.
All right, welcome back. Well, it was great. We just had a great conversation. Z really pointed out, and I want to emphasize this point. A players out in the workplace want to work with A players. And when you bring in A players, they will either bring in the other A players that they know, or other A players will find you. So if you're running a workplace that is full of A-level players, you're going to be able to bring in people. But there's a long road to get there to where you're bringing in the A-list players.
Sure.
So I want to talk a little bit, Ben. I want to talk to you, because this is exactly what we brought you on for today. What are some of the tangible benefits that a small business owner can offer besides just bumping up the starting salary or we're seeing a lot here in Las Vegas, employers are starting to $500, $800 signing bonuses. What are some of the tangible benefits? What are some of the options that employers have that they may not understand or know that they have? And how might that be a little better for them on their bottom line than paying a higher hourly wage or salary or giving signing bonuses?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the employee benefits space, the medical benefits are the single most requested benefits. And for obvious reasons, they're very expensive. So, and to kind of touch a little bit about what you said about the compensation and why it might be better to look into investing in benefits. So if you just take $100 and you look at investing that $100 in an increase in compensation versus investing in benefits, that $100 is going to cost the company what? Taxes. So FICA, federal unemployment, state unemployment, here in Nevada, Nevada modified business tax, and workers' compensation. That could be an extra $10 to $15 for the company on that $100. In addition, the employee has to pay their fair share of taxes. So that $100 could mean 80 or 70 depending upon their tax rate. So when you invest in employee benefits, it doesn't cost them extra in company taxes. It doesn't cost the employee anything. As a matter of fact, it is tax deductible. And so whatever the company's tax situation is, they're going to receive that tax benefit. So obviously investing money into benefits can be very lucrative from that perspective. So
So quick summary on the math there. if you are thinking about spending for every additional 100 you're thinking about spending on additional salary or bonus for your employees, that's giving you the privilege of paying the government another $15 on top of that, and the employee doesn't even see that. The employees don't even see that whole $100. So I wanted to just do a little quick math for everybody. So go on.
Yeah. So now, when you think about, and we'll start with medical benefits and then talk about a few of the other types of benefits that are out there. So the inflation of just premiums for medical benefits is somewhere between 5 to 10% per year. And that's just on the premium side. The way that insurance companies are also impacting the cost is by changing the internal plan designs, by increasing deductibles, taking away copays, increasing the co-insurance. So, and it really does, it depends on the demographic of the employee. If you have a 25-year-old who is super healthy and never goes to the doctor, those benefits are going to be less important than somebody who's, say, 50 years old with a spouse and 3 kids. So you really do have to understand who you're working with there. And so medical benefits could be much more important for those folks. Now, dental and vision, they are nice to have. Again, it depends on the situation. But when it comes to benefits that people can really use, disability can really be helpful for people. So especially if you are in a high-risk industry where you are potentially going to get injured, or if you are the lone source of income in your household, having a company disability policy is something that is a really good benefit for folks. And they're depending upon the industry, they're not as expensive as you would think they are. So
I actually want to bring up the one you were talking about a few shows ago about the childcare benefits. That would actually help them too, and help the company.
Absolutely.
What do you think?
Yeah. So I have 3 children, and we have been fortunate enough to be able to put them in daycare. But it was, I think when we had 2 in, it was $1,700 a month, and that was actually on the cheap. That was on the cheaper side. So you can imagine, especially if somebody has an on-site daycare where they could bring their child to work. I know that there's some liability and stuff that goes along with that, but really providing at least some benefit for childcare is really, really beneficial, because if you are concerned with either the financial aspect of it, or you're concerned with just not having a place to take a child, then you're not going to be focused on your job. So that work-life balance.
Do you think a lot of company or less company are offering child care?
It's not.
Elsewhere?
So again, it depends on the company. I think larger companies that have bigger bottom lines have the luxury of spending those kinds of dollars in those areas. And if it's like you were saying, the hard to hire positions, or the ones that are it's where the person has maybe a skill set that isn't very common.
Right.
That is something that you might be able to use to entice someone to come work for you. So.
Yeah, so people, when you in HR, when you're presenting an offer, especially like you mentioned for the difficult to fill skill set at the higher level, people are looking at not just the salary, not just the title, not just the company, but the overall benefits package. And that's really important because some people, I know in Florida, were paying $1,700 a month just on medical benefits.
Yeah.
And they're healthy and they're not really going to the doctor. So that's a big chunk of their salary, just to pay for medical. So it's looking at the entire package.
And one final thing to add, sorry if I was interrupting you. One of the things that we can't get more of is time. And so if there are any benefits that can help an employee to save time in certain areas, those are invaluable.
You mentioned when you were first getting started, it depends on the business depends on the employee. What are some of the demographics? I can see if you are running a restaurant or you are running some kind of retail, you're looking for entry-level employees. They might have families now, though, right? I mean, that's been a big demographic change. When we were growing up, retail was all kids working, right? And after the recession, it wasn't all kids working anymore. So what are some of the things, again, so we can help people build a strategy, what are some of the things they should think about their business, the types of employees they're trying to attract, those demographics? What should they be thinking about as they look at this? Because there really is a world of benefit options that are out there. You can get quickly overwhelmed thinking about it, and you can make some really smart, good choices of one or two really key things as opposed to offering everything, right? So what are some of the things small business owners should be thinking about as they start to think about compensation, benefits, those kinds of things?
Yeah, I mean, with smaller companies, especially, you did mention a couple of the restaurant industry, retail, where the wages aren't going to necessarily be that high. You're not going to get the participation in those benefits. So there are other less expensive benefits that maybe not be medical, but maybe if you paid for their dental or vision, or maybe if you paid for life insurance, or maybe if you even paid for some sort of supplemental. There are ways that you can pay for benefits that way. So what were you going to say? Oh, sorry. I thought you were going to had something to add there. So
That's what I do when I run out of things to say too.
well, I mean, so the way that I go about interacting with a company and kind of giving them advice is I really do look at their situation and what the goals are that they're trying to achieve, and then let's look at the budget on what they have to put into this program. So, because it could be that you want to offer a little bit of a bump in wages if you can't afford a full benefits program. Especially with a smaller company, you also might look at if you have a lot of hourly folks. Instead of having a large staff, you might want to reduce the staff to make sure people can achieve full-time hours. So when people's wages are lower, having more hours allows them to make more money. So
I was gonna actually mention this earlier. One of my friends who own a restaurant here in Vegas actually was telling me that he couldn't hire people because he cannot afford it. According to him, I never really did my research, but he said that the people are only accepting higher salary. Is that true? Have you guys heard about this?
I'm not familiar with the retail sense.
What I have heard is that partially because of the pandemic, partially because of such a tight labor market, is people are exploring other career options. So if they were working restaurant, if they were working retail, they're looking for, now that they know lots of people are hiring, they're looking for maybe that job they can work at home, or maybe that job they can have flexible hours. They're actually looking to make a move out of that industry. A lot of people are doing that right now, is what I understood. Do you understand the same thing, Ben?
yeah, absolutely. If you were making $10, $12 an hour, and then you're making upwards of $20 an hour on unemployment, it does kind of open your mind to, hey, there might be some other options out there. I mean, I don't know if anybody's tried to get an Uber recently, but there is a huge shortage of those drivers because they're, again, in that hourly wage, and they're a lot of times they're abused, and they get, especially in Vegas, you get people that don't behave themselves in the cars.
Yep.
So you're exactly right. They are looking at other options outside of the industry that they were in.
And they're thinking about it from a negotiation standpoint. If I'm going to put up with this hassle, I want more money. And that just emphasizes another lesson we talk about in this show. a lot, everything's a negotiation, and that's why what Ben is talking about is so important, because you can bump up the pay a little bit, you can offer some kind of benefit nobody else is offering, you can combine all these things, and you can do them in such a way that maybe you get a better tax benefit from it than if you were just to just bump up the salary outright.
Yeah.
So
in my advice to any companies out there that are in that area where it may be an easy to fill position, but it's a hard to retain position, where you're looking at designing a compensation and benefit strategy, really talk to an expert who does that for a living, who understands how to analyze your company's goals and then helps develop a strategy that's going to fit within your budget. That would be my recommendation, because again, it's difficult for me to say you do this benefit because there are so many variables that go into it. So.
Well, you would think as a business owner, if you open a restaurant, before you open the restaurant, you would have done your due diligence, right? Look at the bottom line, look at, your goals and growth, and progression and whatnot. And how do you attract the staff that you want? How do you retain them? And then how do you get the referrals? By what is your restaurant going to do differently, and how can you attract people? There are a lot of restaurants that have just they started marketing to meetup groups, and they're offering little packages for them, or wedding receptions, or they're having caterers in there, or whatever. So there are many different things that, if they look at it, that how they can attract customers. And also, when you're attracting the customers, whichever staff members you have, put your rewards and recognition, employee of the month, or anything else, or have photo booths, or red carpet, and redo the grand opening again. I think we talked about that the last time. Anything to create media, content, and posting, and again, outsourcing. There's so many kids they're pretty good with digital marketing, that you can engage these young folks who can promote your restaurant. When you promote the restaurant and you have people coming in as a customer, they may think hey, this would be a cool place to work at. You never know.
yeah, real quick, because we're running short on time, but I do want to get this question out there for our business owners who are watching. You've both been pros in the industry for a long time. We talked a little bit about the Uber situation, the restaurant situation. What are employees looking for right now? What are those things they want to leverage? What's going to get employees who are thinking about making a career change, or just thinking about taking it slow before they come back? What are they looking for in employment right now?
Well, if I have to tell my younger self, the advice I would personally give to my younger self is, we do what we have to do to make the money. When we have that money, then to do what we really want to do. So I would say follow your passion. Life is short. Whatever you enjoy doing, if you wanted to open a restaurant, if you wanted to start a blog, if you wanted to do whatever you want to do, follow your passion and not what society said. To be successful, you got to do da 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 da. That's what I would tell my younger self, if I had younger children growing up now.
The advice that I like to give people is to put themselves into the shoes of the people that they're hiring. And think, okay, if I were coming in and looking for a position within this company, is this a position that I would be happy to take? Is this a wage that is commensurate with the job that I'm going to do? Do I, like we talked about, feel valued with this company? Are the benefits going to be something that's going to help me if I need them? So really just looking at it from the perspective of the person they're hiring rather than their bottom line.
So great stuff, and of course great company culture, and because people are asking themselves right now, is it worth the hassle for me to go work at this place that's hiring right now? What kind of hassle am I going to face? Is it worth it? So, well, thank you for being here today, Z, Ben. Tell everybody how they can reach you.
My email address is zeellall@yahoo.com.
And my email address is the easiest one I've ever had. It's ben@shea2.com.
That is a pretty easy email. That's got
Very
mine
short,
beat.
short and simple.
Yes.
Maria, last words?
Yes, all I can say is when you are an employee, put everything that you have in there. Treat the company that hired you like it's your business. Because you know what? You might be in that company short or long term, but it's all learning process if you decide to become an entrepreneur or owning a business in the future. So every company that you are hired for, they actually trusted you, meaning this is now your business.
All right. Well, great stuff. Well, that's it for us today on Vision to Success. We're going to be talking about this topic again on our next show just because there's so many things to talk about. We're going to bring this in from a couple of different perspectives. So thank you for watching us today, and we will see you in 2 weeks. Getting your business started, or if you're struggling with your business, trying to get those customers, trying to communicate what you do, you've always got to come back to the first one is your overall business strategy. And like we said, that starts with defining why you started your business, who you're doing it for, and how you help them. We help people with the nuts and bolts pieces of their business, turn your dream, your spark of an idea into reality.